this is so cool that we're doing this. I'm so excited. The last book, her other book, I was most upset.
I know, I'm sorry.
My good, lovely colleague, Pippa Hudson, was sitting in this seat, and I remember, I think I sent you a message saying, any reason why you didn't, and you said something along the lines of,
I was too scared to ask.
that is exactly the wording you used.
And so reaching it officially, and it's just like, I really like you, but it's kind of stalkerish.
I'm genuinely like so delighted that you've asked me, and thank you. And you should be immensely proud of this book, as I am of you and it.
Thank you.
And I loved it. And I obviously, my own personal thing is that anything around identity I adore and I relate to. But there is a trend that we're seeing in publishing where finally our stories are being recognized as having worth, hopefully from not only from a sort of voyeuristic point of view, which I think we need to acknowledge that happens. Probably 70-80% of my buying public are old white women, and we love you. But there is that importance of people of colour being able to go into bookstores and picking up stories about themselves that we are able to relate to and feel a connection to and an importance of. And there needs to be more of that, I think. Something that I didn't know, I mean, there's so much that I didn't know, because it almost feels as if there is, for Asian people, and I'm using that term incredibly broadly, your stories are lesser down the list of priority than my story, for example, or a Sisonke story, or etc., etc. What I learned was that there is a term adjacent to coconut, which is banana.
Yeah.
Just explain this.
So banana is where you're yellow on the outside and you're white on the inside.
So I was thinking, like, I really wanted to open with a gag where it's like a banana and a coconut walk into a bookshop. That was going to be like my opener. My opener, in fact, is going to be around names. And when you talk in the book, sorry, out of breath and pregnant, I'm so sorry.
You're doing great, babe. You're doing great.
It's hot in here. When you talk in the book about names and the significance of names, that is for me where I was gripped. And it was in this spot, almost a year ago, I think, maybe more, for my house launch, that you told me that you once upon a time had been called Sandy.
Oh yeah.
And I was like the concept of other naming was not new to me. This is South Africa. But for you, who I've always known as Ming-Cheau, it was like, this is so strange to me. But just talk us through, and you talk about it in the book, and hopefully that'll give us a nice lead into identity and all that goes with.
So coming to South Africa in the early 90s, very much still just post-apartheid, well, the abolishment of apartheid. And we were suggested to get English names, and that would help us assimilate or become more comfortable with the surroundings around us. So while it was kind-hearted, the advice, it really messes you up when, even if the whole point was that you don't stand out so much because you don't have such a different name, like our faces still look different, the way we are, the way we eat, everything about us is still so different that it's one name is not going to change that's such a massive aspect. But maybe in the long run, in terms of like applying for a job or, you know, those kind of things where you have a more assimilated name and you can actually like maybe get something out of it. Whereas like for myself, using the name Ming-Cheau Lin professionally, I had never actually ever gotten a job just based off my CV. And I'm a pretty badass copywriter, I must say. Every agency that I've been to, I've been promoted quite a few times. I was poached to go to another agency, that was my last agency, but never once did I actually get something from just my CV. So when it comes to names, this whole like confusion behind trying to understand who you are. So being born being Ming-Cheau, and then eventually becoming Sandy. But now Sandy doesn't exist on any official documentation, it doesn't exist anywhere pretty much. And then it came to the point where in, like at the end of matric, where I needed to get like a student bank account so that I could actually spend money and stuff the next year at college. And Standard Bank wouldn't give me an account because my name on my certificate said Sandy Lin, but then my name on my ID and all the official documentation said Ming-Cheau Lin. And so there were so many instances as a young person where being Sandy felt weird. It felt, there was just something very confusing about that, and I could never put like my finger on it. It was only in second year college where I started using my Chinese name again, and this was because I started working at a bookstore, and they actually asked me like, why are you applying with Sandy? Like your ID says Ming-Cheau, and then I said, well, you can call me whichever, they're both my names, and they decided to call me Ming-Cheau, and so from there, this whole journey in reclaiming my name as part of my identity and something that actually means something to me, it really, I think it also helped me in many ways understand my own identity by just being a medium to kind of like unpack what I felt about my name and what my name means to me. And the thing is, there's nothing said about, how do you say, if you do have a Western name, so to say, and you're not Western, it also doesn't matter at the same time. It's really about the choice that you make as an individual. Do I want this? How does it impact me? How does it make me feel? And if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, reclaim your name. But if you're happy with it, use your Western name. There's also no issues around that.
Are there still people that call you Sandy?
Oh yeah. From Bloom days. My Bloom from Sandy people.
And how do you feel about that?
I do feel slightly. The thing is, I openly share my journey in unlearning, and so people around me know how far I've come when it comes to identity and understanding myself and the validation that I have for myself. And it's honestly, it actually feels a little bit disrespectful because it's almost a dead name, so to say. And the name for me, it brings a lot of confusion. And there was a time where I was called that. But today, now, I don't feel like I'm that same person. I feel that I've grown, I understand a lot better, I understand a lot more. And to call me by that, it's, while I know the intention is not bad, but the effect is not exactly the best.
Do you find now that you are, I mean you've always been, but publicly and on books and all that in life, you are Ming-Cheau. Do you feel that you navigate through life differently, or that there is a different perception? I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and a black girl who has what one might call a Western name. Yeah. And we were both talking about that experience where you're engaging with somebody maybe over the phone or online, and they've built an entire perception, and then like my black ass turns up and they're like, and there's like a visible kind of like thing. Not horror normally, but you know that visible thing where they're like, not what I was expecting, don't, and now particularly in South Africa because we are so that there is that. Do you find that different? Is it different now when before you were like Sandy and you turn up and then they go, whereas now they're like, we're prepared for this. We know what's coming.
So Sandy Lin can actually be ambiguous. It's quite ambiguous. It's totally possible white.
Absolutely.
And if you speak to me on the phone, you would also think I'm white.
Yeah.
Some people have had a little like shock and horror, and or ask, or try to phone me while I'm standing right in front of them. It's like so many of those instances. But from an intersections kind of point of view, I must say that I don't experience as much prejudice and racism with my name as black people do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. So let's talk about that. So you give us what I love about this book is that you fill in a lot of gaps that many of us probably don't know. We know a history of South Africa in a very specific, essentially black-white context, and if we're lucky, maybe a black-white so-called colour context. Very rarely are we hearing other, the other. And you give us a comprehensive history in a very readable way about that. So your immediate family came from Taiwan here.
Yes.
You were 3?
Yeah.
And what was the motivation for that from your parents' point of view?
So, like most immigrant parents, it really is to provide a better future for your family, and also to make sure that your children have better opportunities than you did. And so, from the East Asian family side, it's never a selfish perspective. It's always for the family. It's always for your children, for the next generation and the next generation. Education is something that's very, very important to our parents. Well, especially my parents. And their definition of success was to make sure that they could provide us with that privilege of education, and something that I don't always think about. And it's like the hardships that they had to go through just to make sure that I got schooling, just to make sure that I attended varsity, to be educated so that I can do more than the options that they were given.
And you speak in the book about this honorary whiteness, essentially, and the privilege that was afforded to you. And privilege, in my experience, privilege is a word that we have come to, we use a lot now, thank God we use it and recognize it. Not everyone understands it, and sometimes they need means to understand it, but that's okay. But back in the day, this concept of privilege, as you and I might discuss it now,
Yes.
was not as defined.
No, not at all.
So just talk through that.
Okay.
In terms of the privilege that you were afforded because of how fucked up the country was.
Yeah. So we were called honorary whites, and this included the Japanese, the Koreans, as well as Japanese, Koreans, and Taiwanese. Whereas the Chinese were classified as colored. So this essentially doesn't really make any sense, but you can read that in my book. So we were known as honorary whites, and so like close enough to whiteness, but not completely there. So we didn't exactly have the same privileges that all white people have, but we were the closest thing to them. And so moving to South Africa, we were able to buy property. We were given spaces where they said, okay, these are the areas that you guys can live in. Some families had to actually motivate to the rest of the street. Hey, would you mind if this Asian family moves into your road? And the Free State is notoriously known for being super racist.
Yes.
And so no person of color was actually allowed to be in the area after hours back in the day. And so us being given this, this opportunity, I wouldn't say an opportunity, being given this leeway.
Faux privilege.
Yeah, faux privilege to actually be there. We were literally like a handful of people of color that were in privileged spaces in Bloemfontein. Because you could still see the divide with the colored and the black people there were still like very much segregated. They had their own areas to live in and stuff, whereas we were living in white areas.
You know, when I think about this, and when I was reading, and the early days that you describe, I just find so fascinating because it's not a frame of reference that I'd necessarily had before.
Yes.
But I mean, you know, it's no surprise as people of colour when you talk about apartheid, and we're like, yeah, it's just, you know, and there is our experiences and our lived experiences are ones that white people will never, as woke or whatever term you want to use, you may want to, you know, will never fully understand. But I mean, apartheid did a number on us.
Oh yeah.
The fact that you coming from Taiwan, but because of some essentially just insane system, you've now, I mean, lucky you've now got this sort of this, as we say, faux privilege. Mm-hmm. But your experiences are not
very privileged.
There's absolutely no reconciliation between this official privilege status that you're given and your actual lived experience.
Yeah.
Just talk about some of the when you first realised as a child, because I think for me that was, people always say, well, you know, when did you know this, and when did you realise that you were black, and when did you realise about racism? And it's like, it's inherently, there's no, I speak to white parents of black adopted kids a lot of the time, and they say, oh, you know, we've been so lucky because my child hasn't experienced racism. I'm like, you are out of your tiny mind. Like, it's simply not possible to exist as a person of colour in this country and to have not experienced from this age. Yeah. And you may not necessarily have the vocabulary for it, but you know that feeling.
Yeah.
That feeling that you get I still get today.
Yeah.
I can point back to when being 2 years old. It's the same feeling. So can you just talk about some of your earliest experiences of being othered?
So I think that honestly in pre-primary I was probably too oblivious to really even notice anything, but that's also because we surrounded ourselves with our communities.
Yeah.
So it's generally a safer space to be your own race in those communities. But I think it was grade 1, so actually being in proper school, now and all, and it was, I call it the lunchbox moment in my book, and it's food. So something that my mother would kindly and thoughtfully make for me to take to school and eat was mocked so hard by all the other white kids around me that it left such a bitter taste in my mouth that I basically didn't really want to bring home food to school anymore. And obviously the usual rhetorics that came with it, so is that dog? If it's what are you eating that smells gross? There's so many connotations and adjectives used to make food sound so unpleasant that I've never heard in my life.
Yeah.
And even from my family side, I never even knew that East Asians are known for eating dogs. I didn't know that. We had a Maltese poodle at home, we weren't planning to eat it. So I had to learn that from white people.
Yeah.
Which also evolves into a whole lot of other things that I had to learn about white people and their perceptions of who we are. And
how we internalize those.
And how we internalize it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're in Bloom. I mean, what a place. I've only been a couple of times. I don't plan on going back anytime soon. I'm sure there are lovely pockets, but not that I went to. And you are growing up almost in, and which I think is very common for people in our, saying our quite broadly, situation where you are living two different cultures.
Yeah.
And as a child, that is a mindfuck of no.
Yeah.
So when do you start to think this? I'm not okay. When do you start to internalize? Because that is, in my experience, that's the natural progression. As children, we are not equipped to. If somebody's telling you you eat dog and this is what you look like and your eyes are this and the immediate reaction is not to then respond with you're an ignorant fool. Your immediate reaction is to internalize, and it becomes about you and you are the problem.
Yeah.
When did that start for you?
Day one. Yeah, because I don't even think I had the confidence or so in East Asian cultures and Southeast Asian cultures as well, but I think this is something that's very evident with all people of color in our communities, is that we're told not to be loud. We're told to be model minorities and to navigate the white spaces so that we can be accepted and then potentially get a job and potentially, there's privilege that comes with being accepted by whiteness. And so, especially with East Asian cultures, we are more conservative. We are more, we don't like to have an argument in public. We don't do confrontations. All of this, which is very, very unhealthy, I'm just saying. So we perpetuate a lot of our own crap as well. So even if someone was saying to me, oh yeah, but you people eat dog. And as much as I could think, no, we don't, you idiot. But inside me, it become more of a, like I said, you shut down. You almost don't have the gees to fight back. You don't want to put yourself in that position. Because the thing is, you're not only then embarrassing or creating a scene for yourself, your family, your community, everyone who's yellow becomes part of that issue. Because everyone will know, oh, y'all know that Chinese person, that Chinese kid. Not that I'm Chinese, but that's what they would say, because that's all they know.
Will you read something?
I never truly saw my skin tone as yellow. It looked more white than yellow. My parents told me I was born even-toned, milky white, with a mop of hair that stood up like fireworks. In our home languages, we talk about our own skin tones as white. The elders would remark how beautiful we were with our white skin and warn us to stay out of the sun so our skin didn't turn black. This is based on direct translation to English. In Mandarin, those words don't have those direct definitions and connotations. Well, yes, there was a sentiment of colorism and anti-blackness, but white in this instance meant light, and pale, and while light and pale, and black meant dark. However, we do call East Asians Guangzhongren, which when directly translated means yellow type people. So in a book, Becoming Yellow, A Short History of Racial Thinking, Professor Dude from National Taiwan University dug deep into the history of when and why the color yellow was used to classify East Asians. So during the time of early foreign missionaries and into the 18th century, Europeans classified East Asians as white. This transitioned to yellow when this German racist guy used the Latin word, I can't pronounce it, but it's like Gilbus, G-I-L-B-U-S. Okay, it means light yellow to describe the Mongolians. So the Mongolians were being synonymous with Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, and Timur, and their roles in Eurasia invasions. The connotations of threat and of fear became entrenched, hence the term yellow peril, and variations therefore of yellow terror, yellow spectre, and the influence of far-reaching and long-lasting. Wing Fai Leung, a sinologist and lecturer in culture, media, and creative studies, ascribes the origins of these terms and descriptions to xenophobic and racist ideology rooted in Western fears of becoming outnumbered and enslaved by the East. I hate that yellow became the race color for Western society's depiction of East Asians. I hate the biased perceptions that became associated with it and the harmful outcome of it, evolving into broad and ignorant gender norms. The emasculation of East Asian men and the hypersexualization of East Asian women. I can't even count the number of times I've been called China girl, me love you long time, or me so horny, which by the way is a whole chapter on its own in the book. Because the West struggles to differentiate between East Asians and light-skinned Southeast Asians. To them, Asia is one big country of Chinamen. We all look the same with our yellow skin, squinty eyes, and black hair. Southeast Asians are often included in this classification as well. While we have our own problems of indoctrination, which includes racism, colorism, and patriarchy, we are also misrepresented in Western society. But it's the Asians living outside of Asia who are the ones who suffer the impact. We are the stereotypes. We are the punchline. We are seen as objects without a second thought or concern. And to add insult to injury, the non-Asian side of the world doesn't even realize that Asians, along with those of Jewish ancestry, comprise one of the two biggest diaspora groups in the world. Like, we are everywhere. Even in Asia itself, we the ones who don't live there are stereotyped. There we're seen as bananas, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. White worshipping and westernized due to our disconnect with ancient traditions and our desire to survive in Western spaces. In actual fact, our identities are complicated and unique. Circumstantial development plays a big part in shaping us. So the children of free immigrants who moved their families to different parts of the world in hope of providing them with better opportunities. We're also the children of history's cruelty of slave trade and colonization. I speak here and through this book of East Asian immigrants from my personal perspective, experience, interactions, and research. I am a first-generation immigrant woman, a Taiwanese-born South African, raised from the age of 3 in Bloemfontein, the Free State. While I don't speak for all East Asian immigrants, since I can't say we all have the same experiences, the path I've chosen of intersection feminism has one goal in mind: to encourage and create conversation around unlearning and progression.
You are somebody that I consider as you challenge me in my thoughts around things, and you are, and it's nice to get to an age, significant age, where I look at the people around me and I think not only are they beneficial in terms of my heart, but they're beneficial in terms of my head, and you're one of those people. And I realized in reading this book my own, I think, laziness actually, when it comes to describing East Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian. You know, growing up in England, Asian means Indian. and anything other than that are Chinese Asians. That's it.
Yeah.
Those are the two groups that exist. And it is laziness, essentially. We can call it ignorance, which, yes, but that laziness, which again comes with privilege.
Yes.
I think laziness and privilege are married.
Definitely.
In that, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to me, does it? Because I'm not. So
it doesn't affect me.
It doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
And that is, and to see that presented to one from a different perspective is eye-opening. But it's only from that point of awareness, I think, that we can then opt to change. And you speak about that in the book very directly, about the once you know, it's essentially once you know better, then you can do better.
Yeah.
I love what you spoke about also, about this idea that, again, I imagine many people experience of living two cultures and being told when you're going to Chinese school you're too westernized, but being told by your white friends, and the compliment being you're just like us with slanty eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a compliment to take home, isn't it?
I've had plenty of those.
I mean, how do you when they said that, you're just like us, but with slanty eyes? I mean, to me, that was what I used to get was, we just don't even see your colour. We don't even think of you as black, would be the thing, and I was meant to kind of beam and go, oh, that's marvellous. What did you think when that was said to you, and when did you think, oh, this is next level bullshit?
My slanty eyes turned from down to up, because like it's, how do you respond to something like that? It's just, it's so belittling.
Was there a point? And maybe I'm harping on about it, but was there a point where you were kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe, and then later on you're like, definitely not?
I think most instances as a child, it was like, you would think that it was a compliment.
Yeah.
You would think that, because at the same time, you don't think you know better.
Yeah.
Because you rely on other people to tell you validation.
Yeah.
It's for validation, to help you with your confidence, and all of these things. And if my friend from school, says this to me, it can't be horrible.
Right.
But yes, actually, people around you can be the most horrible dicks.
Yeah. True. I want to fast forward a lot because I want people to read the book and I don't want to give everything away, but I want to. One of the things that really made me smile, but also was fascinating to me, was that essentially you come to Cape Town to learn about race.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an eye-opener and a half. But that is what happens, and a lot happens when you move here. And I get it. We can sit here and slag on Cape Town, but I get it. You've come from this certain place, you're a certain age, and it's kind of your coming of age.
Yeah.
Story is to come to Cape Town and study, but also to explore different elements of yourself, the feminism that you are learning more about, sexuality that you are learning more about, otherness that you are learning more about.
Yeah.
What was your first impression of, and I don't mean, when I say first impression of Cape Town, I mean from a personal point of view of what it meant to you and what it was doing for you? What were those early days like here?
It started off as freedom.
Yeah.
Because obviously without my parents being around to say no to things or whatnot, I was making my own decisions.
Yeah.
But then even again, I wasn't exactly that. I didn't really go off the rocker with what I do. It's not like I drink. I have this thing called the Asian flush, where you turn red and sometimes you get headaches, sometimes your heart races. But basically 1 out of 4 East Asians have this problem. So I don't drink. So it's not like I could go and get drunk at different bars and stuff. So coming to Cape Town, it was very strange, because what I noticed that it was very privileged. But then again, I went to a very expensive college. Like, my parents gave me the luxury and the privilege of being able to attend a college that I really wanted to go to, so that I could learn about brand communications, which is something that probably no other, like East Asians don't usually go into this route, and if you come from Bloemfontein, you wouldn't even know that was something you could study, or that could have been potentially a job to have later on in life. And it was, so within class, where I realized, because we were only 5 people of color in amongst 40 to 60 kids, it was very evident that we didn't fit in with all of that. And then other layers that added to it was, when they would discuss pop culture, you know, go on about Quentin Tarantino and all that other cuck, I would kind of just sit there and be like, what the fuck is that? You know, and it made me feel like I was ignorant, that I was stupid, that maybe I don't even belong at this college because clearly I'm not creative enough, clearly I don't know enough. But at college as well, then similar things would happen in class where like, we would, how do you say, go back into history in one of my classes called critical studies. And this is when you apply critical thinking. And we were, so the topic of Orientalism came about, and having to watch your whole class look at you when they talk about how white men would go over to Asia and pick brides and bring them back, and everyone is staring at you. Yo, that's awkward, hey? I can't. So I think just going to class daily was a very harsh reminder that I didn't belong there. And then after hours, like being with my Asian friends and stuff, I also didn't really feel like I belonged there. So I think Cape Town made me realize how alone I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's in Cape Town that you really start to kind of remove the lens of whiteness, or first of all, appreciate that you've been raised in, I want to say raised, I don't mean by you, specifically by your parents, but in terms of your formative years, have been from a point of view of whiteness, which is true of probably all of us, actually. And regardless of whereabouts in South Africa or not, in my case, you grow up, you are raised in a lens of whiteness. And it's through that, and this is, I think, the most fascinating part of the book for me is when you acknowledge your own racism. And that is empowering.
It is. And it's also humbling.
Yeah.
Well, because it makes you realize how ignorant you actually are.
That is hectic though, isn't it, when you're confronted with, as a person of colour, confronted with your own prejudice about other people of colour.
Yeah.
That is, no, but it's I get it. I really love that part of the book.
And it wasn't just on racism, it was also classism and gender, you know, there's so many different points in how we can actually be so horrible to the next person. And when I had to actually realize what racism actually meant and how everything actually connects to it. And you know, you have that moment where once you see, you can't unsee. And it literally hasn't stopped. And every single day I'm unlearning. And this is why I'm so grateful for all my black friends, because honestly, if I didn't have the privilege to be in their spaces, to be embraced by their communities, I don't think that I would be able to unlearn the way that I have done. And so, thank you very much.
But it is, I mean, it really, for me, that part of the book really resonated strongly. And it's not always comfortable reading. And I used to say this on my show, you know, that people, whenever I would talk about race on air, people would phone up and you would inevitably tweet me and go, what are they doing, these white people? And I'm like, and you mention race, and you know, and people go, oh, why is she harping on about race? And my whole thing is, you know, in order to, you have to, if you're feeling comfortable all the time, something is inherently wrong with you as a person. You need to challenge yourself, and step out of that, and discomfort is a good thing. And I felt, not that I felt uncomfortable reading, because I think I try and own my own stuff around it, but it is for me an enormously powerful thing. And then when you are writing about it, I think that will speak volumes to other people as well, that you are talking about sitting in your discomfort around things that, again, privilege and laziness could allow us to go, not really my problem, and you know, but not. Let's talk about the internet.
Oh, I love the internet.
Let's talk about social media. A curse and a blessing.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the Ming-Cheau Lin thing we'll sum it up really quickly?
We can talk about the how to say, the post.
Yes,
what
exactly.
happened with Ming-Cheau Lin, because not everyone knows about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also want to talk about that's obviously the internet not being great, but also social media being fantastic for you in terms of finding spaces where you do feel comfortable, and the kind of Oprah aha moment where you are reaching out to people like you who are sharing their experiences.
Yes.
And you're like, I'm not imagining this.
I'm not
this
alone.
is real.
Oh my
I'm not
goodness.
alone.
Yeah.
And that's the healthy validation, right?
Yes, very much so, definitely. Especially as East Asians, that we're not, like I said, we're not very loud, we're not very forward, we're very conservative and mostly keep to ourselves in our community. That these aren't the kind of things that you would go shouting about, you know, like, oh, I see another Asian there. Hey boy, what's up, guy? You know, like you don't do that. So we kind of do the whole, you know, the courtesy nod. Yeah. So you see another Asian. And or if you see another personal colour in a very white space, there's also courtesy nod.
Yes. I just run up and hug them. just the desperation sometimes. Yeah. So let's talk. So you sent out this tweet in response to a restaurant opening in Johannesburg with the delightful name Ming-Cheau Lin, opened by two Afrikaans guys, right?
I'm not sure. They didn't necessarily say Afrikaans, but it's two white men now.
Who was Peter then?
I don't know.
Dude, you've written the book.
No, but I don't know who he is.
Oh, I thought he was related to the thing. Talk amongst yourself. Okay. So these two white guys open this
Asian fusion restaurant.
Asian fusion restaurant called Ming-Cheau Lin, and you send out a tweet.
It was really just a vent. I didn't really think that anything would come of the tweet or whatnot. So I just needed to vent, and I said that. I can't remember exactly the right words, but I pointed out the 4 different Asian that they were talking about, so for fusion, and how kind of like historically it's not nice to put them together due to their history with each other. But anyway, so I said that the name itself is a horrible idea, because when you are an East Asian woman and you walk down the streets and someone shouts at you, "Ming-Cheau Lin," it's really not funny. And so it was just actually not, it was even kind of light-hearted. It wasn't even that hateful. Like my tweet wasn't even that hateful. It was just saying that this is what you wrote and it is incorrect. And this is how it hurts us. And I stopped it at that.
I don't even think hateful, and I'm going to pick you up on your use of words then.
Yeah.
Hateful never even came into it. I think you, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I don't want to be good, but you mean it wasn't vehement like anger?
Oh yeah. No,
you were just being like, this is not cool.
Yeah.
The backlash, the support and the backlash that you received. I mean, sure.
So that was intense. So after having tweeted that, it first kind of made its rounds in South Africa. And my black sisters and brothers completely supported it and made it viral on, you know, like in South Africa. And then the diaspora Asians picked it up in America, in Canada, in Australia, and so forth. And it just kind of blew up. But then again, when it blows up, not only there's the support, but the backlash that came with it. So not everyone knows really about the backlash. And what kind of happened was I got trolled and targeted by a whole lot of people who would tweet at me horrible things about how I'm a sensitive bitch, I need to get over myself, it's just a joke, I am ruining the lives of other people as well as all the employees by saying this, so I'm going to, people are going to lose jobs because of my little
black people.
Oh yeah, black people. So my intersections aren't even right, because now black people are going to lose their job because of my tweet. Then I got trolls who literally targeted me and started posting links of my work up and commenting on everything that I wrote and that I said. And like trying to find a loophole to make me look terrible, I assume. So I just blocked all these people, and I was like, I'm not gonna give a fuck. So I just blocked all these people, and then there was the secondary backlash was when I actually had these white acquaintances who were pretty woke and very often supported my work, and let's call her Susan. So Susan,
and she's here tonight.
No, she's not. She blocked me on social media. So Susan took it on herself to go and fight all these trolls. And so there was this very one specific troll that I write about. We call him Peter. So Susan finds out who Peter actually is. and phones his workplace to let them know that he's harassing a young woman on social media, which is true, is what he's doing. But she did that on her own. I had no say in any of this. I did not tell her, hey, go find out who this cunt is. No. So he literally, yeah. And so she kind of went next level and found out who his wife was, and then contacted her workplace. And so Peter, in his, oh, holy shit, something real is happening to me now, targeted me as the person who perpetuated this. So firstly, it was all tweets, but because I blocked him, I couldn't see anything. And Susan kindly sent me screenshots in my DM to let me know of things that I blocked. So he found my email and decided to email me. And he sent me this whole long email about how I have made people lose jobs, and I have potentially made people also want to end their lives because of the backlash because of my tweet, and how he will pay money to watch me punished. And that for me was a bit of a, oh wow, I need to go and check out all of my details online that are public, so that nowhere of where I live and people that are close to me where they live like exist on my social media.
The thing that struck me about this whole story and the whole, Peter obviously a complete fool and all the rest of it, but I thought what was interesting was, and it's I've seen it in operation numerous times, is Susan the White Saviour.
Yes, Susan the White Saviour.
That was the thing, because when her actions, unsolicited by you, then had a consequence, and this is what I find so interesting and have experienced numerous times. When there suddenly is a consequence to Susan, Susan wants out.
Oh, Susan wants out, because I shared this on
It's really
my
fun
Facebook.
to be a white saviour until you really have to back up your stuff, right?
Yeah, because he included her name in that email. Obviously he spelled it wrong.
Much to her chagrin. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I posted it on Facebook, and Susan decides to send me a direct message and let me know that you are going about this all wrong. You shouldn't share these posts. You shouldn't share. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, you literally found this guy's wife's work, and you're telling me I'm doing it wrong. What is wrong with you? And I couldn't deal. And after a while, I just realized that actually, you know what, you wanted to insert yourself and be a hero. And then when your name got involved in all of this, which is your own doing, by the way, now you want me to run away and hide yourself. She blocked me on every single social media platform after being my, number one rah-rah.
There is a power in blocking though, and what I love about what you then speak about is how, as part of your own journey on your development and growth and various things that are going on in your life at the time and relationships, you make a concerted effort and a decision that you just essentially won't allow bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful. In that you literally just start deleting people, regardless of their proximity to you, your husband. It's a thing. And it's, we can write something like that off and say, oh yeah, well we can all hit the block button on social media, but it's more than that, isn't it? You are making a statement about, and this is also part of your journey in terms of your mental health, and which is obviously tied to your self-esteem and self-worth. Yeah. You are making a statement about what you will and will not accept.
Yeah.
That is really powerful stuff.
The thing is, it's not just what affects me directly.
Sure.
If I see comments on Facebook about black people, if I see comments on Facebook that are homophobic, if anything that, and I do question them, and the thing is, I kind of think about the background of the person who's actually posting, and I think about if I want to make that effort to educate them. Because it is not the responsibility of the oppressed to teach the oppressor how to be a better human.
Yeah.
So I usually pick and choose if I think that they are, they have capacity to unlearn. Then I will share with them and explain to them. I'll even coddle them, which is also unnecessary, but I do that. To help them get to a point where they can understand. But it is so laboring, it is so tiring that you can write paragraphs and paragraphs of explanations and then you get back at, I am not racist. And I'm like, did you even read anything I wrote?
There's so much I want to touch on, but I want to open it up because we've got like 10 minutes left. I just want to talk about quickly the nature of memoir. And it's probably my favourite genre, just because I'm nosy but I love to. That for me, there's nothing quite like a good memoir. There's nothing quite like a bad one either. And for me, the beauty of memoir comes in the author's honesty and not self-deprecation, because that's, nobody wants to read a book where somebody's just self-flagellating the whole time and saying I'm a dreadful human being, but acknowledging flaws. Because what makes us as readers pick up memoir and continue to read is relating, and is that thing of, you're also a shit human being sometimes. And you, to me, the key in this memoir is that you are so introspective. I mean, you are anyway, that's who you are, Mervyn, right? The you that I see when we go to macro for 5 hours a day is the you that is in the book. And I wondered if in writing, and I think anyone who writes memoir goes through a thing where as you're writing you're like, but will this end up in the final edit? Because you're suddenly thinking about the faces who are appearing, who don't necessarily have the opportunity to, let me not say defend, but they're also not probably going to write a book. So first of all, let's talk about the honesty. Are you happy with us seeing all of your shit? And secondly, the people who might take issue with what you've written, are you concerned about them?
So yes, I hung up all my dirty laundry. I do reveal a lot. I allow myself to be vulnerable, but it's part of my journey into unlearning that I need to allow myself to be this way and to write like this. Because everything is there. It's all been in here this whole time, and to finally actually put it like typing, to a screen. It's been, I want to say, it's not necessarily therapeutic, but you know like how you go to therapy and it actually gets worse before it gets better? So after writing, it felt horrible. It felt so shit. I also had moments where I thought, did anyone even bother to read something like this? Would anyone even be interested in my story about how people laughed at me because I had different lunch? But I do know, and this is because I have been trying to write about my identity and my race and my experience of it and my perception of it for the past couple of years. And in doing so, I've actually had a lot of young East Asians reach out to me and to actually unpack themselves, to unlearn a little bit on their own, or challenges that they're having where they feel alone and don't have that safe space to actually communicate or for someone to relate. I've had many messages come through telling me that I felt like you were writing my story. And for me it's like, okay, I remembered this is why I did it. It's because it's for validation. It's for all of us to have that validation, because we didn't have that before, and I think that not having that, it prohibits you from growing as well.